Thank you for staying so late for the session. Hopefully this is helpful for you. Just a little bit background on Business Adventures. I started a firm about a year and a half ago. We focus on AI and automation. Basically anything you can see in the office, on the farm, in the factory, construction sites, logistics, supply chain, any kind of automation, workflow automation, or robotics companies we will look at. We generally invest in seed and Series A stages, mainly late seed and early A, meaning we typically write a couple $1 million in check size into early stage company. So today I want to talk about investing in AI, especially investing in AI in and out of Silicon Valley. Could we do a show of hands? How many of you actually coming from outside of the valley? Great. And how many of you are startup founders? Great. Okay. This is actually will be entirely relevant to you. Hopefully it's interesting. So first of all, definition of AI. The textbook definition is that AI is the simulation of human intelligence processes by machine. The way we look at this for investment purpose is through this metrics. There are two dimensions we look at. The first one is up and down the stack, from the most bottom layer core computing tech to this is chips, things that kind of like power the most bottom layer of AI, to one layer up programming platform and algorithm. There are some open source tools that are enabled by these chips to power a lot of the models. And then to a layer up, we have the application layer. On the application layer, we specifically look at two things. One, there are some horizontal use cases. These are companies that design product or programs that will be applicable to many, many industries and verticals. And there are full stack applications which are only specific to one or a few verticals. So we do investing across spectrum of these. One thing that I didn't write there is the data layer. It's a fabric and an enabler of all these different layers. The better applications that you have, the better data you will collect, which in turn will make your application stronger and models more accurate. So it's a loop that will make your startup more defensible. In terms of verticals, the second dimension is kind of like different spaces we invest in. We start from office applications like workflow tools to deskless workers, people who are in factories, farms, home construction, logistics supply chain, some healthcare as well. So this is how we think about AI in general, and this is the framework we use when we look at deals. These are some of the companies that are public right now and we can talk about. So they roughly fall into the framework. We do tend to invest more in applications in the more applied AI layer than the bottom computing, which we also do look at. So on the high level, AI investment is growing really fast. I'm sure you've heard people say, the buzz is over, it's declining. It's actually not the case. If you look at investments or number of AI companies, they're just getting started. In fact, in every single discipline, every single vertical, and most of the large companies will see AI or automation being used in like a lot of places. So for example, we often see, using algorithms to underwrite risks in financial services, very, very common. We see a lot of manufacturing automation in automobile assembly. We see a lot of supply chain management automation in retail. So there are some spaces that are more advanced than the others. Some are just getting started. But like we see penetrations in a lot of these different verticals and different use cases. So one thing I'm particularly excited about investing in this area is because AI is transforming how everyone works and not just the people who work in offices. Next, I'll talk about 5 trends that we've seen when looking at AI investment and some examples that we either invest in or look at and I think are very compelling. So the first one is that we see a lot of startups that democratize access. what this means is that typically there are products or services that are only available to the super rich, people. So, for example, security guards. Usually, you have to spend hundreds or $1,000s to hire people to watch your home or offices. Most families can't afford it. One example I want to give here is a company called Deep Sentinel. They make a 24/7 security camera, which have people to watch them all the time for $50 per month. They were able to do this with the help of computer vision. So how this works is like you have camera set up outside of your home. There's a lot of signal, lots of noise coming in. The first layer of filter will be through computer vision. It will filter majority of the noises. And then down the funnel, there will actually be corner cases or signals that may actually be relevant for people to look at. Then there are security guard actually going through the signals and look at them. Therefore, they can achieve to do this with not many people and still watch your home 24/7. I think the beautiful part of this is that whenever something happens, they will be able to intervene. So if you see a package thief stealing your package, you can, the security guard will say, stop, don't do this. Versus most of the products on the market only central triggers. You'll probably get like 20 alerts every day, and you don't have time to go through it, and you can't intervene. So this is one of the things in our view that democratize access and make certain products and services available to the mass market when typically it's only available for like certain niche market. The second one is startups that automate repeatable processes with clear ROI. This is very common, and oftentimes when company gets paid or start growing. So you probably heard of company like Automation Anywhere, UiPath. They've raised very large amount of funding in the past year or so. The reason they were able to grow so fast is because they really help company cut costs and make their operations more efficient. One of the companies I want to give as an example here is a company called Rasa. They serve as your interface with your customers or partners. So instead of having customer service reps answering every single email, answering every single questions, they were able to provide the models with which companies can use to develop their own robots to chat with people. And these are contextual robots, meaning they're more advanced than just Q&A, simple Q&A. The robots can read contact information and also answer the question more intelligently. So with this, it's cheaper, it's easier to manage, it's more accurate, it's faster, it's always available. But more importantly, large companies are always in control with their tools and data. They don't have to worry about giving data access to a small company because this is open sourced. They can in control of their data, they can build whatever they want to build. So this is the second trend and example I want to point out. The third one is startups that help solve labor shortage issues. We're seeing this more and more often, especially in verticals like farming, manufacturing, etc. For example, one of the companies we invested in is an autonomous welding company. So they kind of help people do welding. Welding industry is very kind of legacy industry. Not many people are familiar with. But welding alone, the demand is increasing 7% every year, while the supply is decreasing. Sorry, the demand is increasing 4% every year, while the supply is decreasing 7%. So if we don't have any automation by 2024, we're going to be short of 400,000 welding positions in the United States alone. So this company is based in Ohio. In Ohio alone, welding is a $16 billion market. This is a robot that helps us to weld automatically. So this is the third trend. And another company I want to give as an example. This is a autonomous weeding robot. Farming, very similar to manufacturing. For example, welding. There's just not enough labor to do the work. If we don't have automation, in about 5 years, we're not going to have enough food to eat. Because you have even when strawberry is ripe, there's not enough people to even pick up the strawberry and grab them from the field. This is really hard work. I'm not sure how many of you actually went to pick up strawberry or do weeding. You basically go like this for about for all day, and your back hurt. Is not a job that a lot of people wanted to do. So this company, they do autonomous weeding. They help the farmers. They can run 24/7, so that people can, save time on weeding and direct their energy to do something else. The fourth trend I want to talk about is startups that augment human potential. So these are the things that fundamentally it's hard for human to achieve versus something that we're just trying to match to human ability. If weeding, for example, we can do this all day long. Accuracy of weeding is a relatively easy thing to achieve versus in this example, this is drug discovery. There are a lot of drugs we're just unable to find cures for because typically the drug discovery process takes a lot of guesswork. We're unable to process information fast enough, and it takes a long time to discover the cure. So with computer vision, with technology, we're able to read the barcode, which are the genetic informations of each gene, and process the information very, very quickly and in parallel. So with this, because so many permutations, we're able to discuss cure to certain disease much more quickly than before. So this is like fundamentally augmenting human potential. The startup does this for disease such as LS or Parkinson's disease, things that we're unable to find cures for in the past. The final trend I want to talk about is startups that scale AI infrastructure. So these are the companies that design AI chips for your small devices. Imagine any small device you take every day can have the processing power of a large computer. You can do a lot of things with little device. So these are the 5 trends that we've noticed that have gotten funding and growing very fast. Where is this all going with the different 5 trends? In my view, I think ideally, this is what we're pushing for as well as a fund, is for every individual and business to have real-time access to the highest quality products and services at the lowest price. I really want to democratize technology, democratize access so that everyone can enjoy the best quality of product and services. So this is the vision. There are lots of problems. I'm happy to discuss it offline. But this is, I'm seeing, at least from the market, a lot more positive than the negative things so far. One thing I want to point out, have you noticed that many of these startups are actually not based in Silicon Valley? Out of the 5 startups I mentioned, 3 are based outside. In fact, we're seeing this trend more and more clearly. A lot of great startups actually getting started. A lot of startups getting started in the Valley, but a lot are also getting started outside of the Valley. For AI specific, like Mythic Chips, which one example, they started in Texas. Then we have Door Security in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Automation Anywhere, this is in California, but we have a lot of other startups like Lemonade is from New York and Factual Industries in Virginia. I'm very excited about this trend personally because I think these startups are catering to the strength of their own regions. They're actually solving problems that the local ecosystem needs to be solved, which is very, very important. I think the best startups are getting started because they're solving real problems locally and they understand these problems. They have great product market fit. They have problem, founder fit. That's set them up for the most success. We're actually seeing hubs across different locations in the United States. Like for example, Detroit, autonomy is a big thing there. We're seeing a lot of the automation companies, Ann Arbor because of University of Michigan. There are a lot of deep tech companies and biotech companies starting from there. Baltimore, EdTech, and Pittsburgh is a great hub for robotics. The color dictates the number of AI startups started in different locations. So the darker the color is, the more startups we're seeing in AI, this according to PageBook, in these different locations. Even within California, you see different hubs based on the strength of local community. even outside of Valley, if you look outside of United States, there are the number of unicorns getting started. Like for example, in China, is phenomenal. I think in China alone, there are just on this list alone, there are maybe 20 unicorns getting started. The first one is DJI. It's a drone. I'm sure most of you are familiar with. They have about 70 to 80% market share in the world. There's not a single company that can compete with them with at least consumer drones in the market. I took a trip to China with our startup portfolio founders and some VCs to visit some of these companies. One of the common feedback from people on the trip is that the amount of growth and automation happening outside of Valley, especially in China, is mind-blowing. Multiple people say this is the best trip they've ever taken because they haven't seen the amount of data and the amount of automation they were able to see on this trip and from these Chinese companies. One of the examples I talked about is bike sharing. All of you are familiar with Lime and Bird. They're everywhere now. But did you know in 2014, that's when the first bike sharing company was started in China. It's called Ofo. 3 years later, in 2017, Lime and Bird got started. Instead of sharing bikes, they started with electric scooters. At least Bird did. Turns out that's the localization that they have to do because Americans don't like to work out and spend energy. But that's a product localization. But they only started 3 years later after the China market is already like really hot. There are a lot of lessons learned from these startups, and now we're on the kind of a path up with these startups, and at some point there's going to be downhill if we learn anything from the Chinese companies. So this is one example of it's happening so fast outside of United States that we start to learn from the other places, which is a really smart thing to do. So where I want to leave you with is why do these all matter? Like when you start companies, why do these all matter? I think the question you want to ask yourself and keep thinking about is, what is your unfair advantage? Based on where you are, based on where you're starting, based on the problem you're solving, are you close to customers? There's a reason our welding robot company has started in Ohio. They were literally next to their customer. They can iterate on product market fit on daily basis. If you're based in California, it's much harder to do. So are you close to customers? Are you able to iterate your product with them? Are you able to sell to them much quickly than other startups? Are you close to top technical and sales talents? There are some certain hubs in the country that have great technical and sales talents. And Utah, for example, has great salespeople. I made a trip there and I'm very, very impressed by enterprise sales capability there. Salt Lake City, great place. Technical talents. Everybody knows in California there are a lot of like very technical engineers, but there are many hubs like closer to universities, CMU, Michigan, Ohio State, and they have great talents as well and cheaper. Availability of capital. Everybody know we have a lot in California, but a lot of people don't know there are actually more and more outside of California as well, especially the different type of capital. Not all the capital is venture funding. So sometimes when you're building a startup, if you don't want to build a $1 billion business, it's actually better to find alternative capital that's not looking for the kind of exit that venture funding is looking for. It's much easier to build it's much easier to get funding that way if investors don't expect 100x in the next 5 years. Understanding of technology and local systems. Again, there's a huge advantage of people who grew up in the region and start a company to solve local problems in that region. Local government tax incentives. This is pretty new. There's a thing called Opportunity Zone, which basically enable investors to get tax-free treatment if your company is started in an Opportunity Zone. So there are lots of regulations around this, but this is something to look into if you're still deciding the location of your startup. And even in San Francisco, there are parts of the San Francisco Opportunity Zone. So if you're based in Opportunity Zone, investor will probably favor your company because it's essentially tax-free for the next 10 years. So the question I want to leave you with is, what's your unfair advantage? If you have one or many, would love to get in touch and talk to me. This is my Twitter handle. My email is just lan@basisset.ventures. Thank you.